we value the land.
Mm.
Western way of thinking values what's on the land.
That's a good way to put it. I like that. Yeah.
So we have to find a happy medium, where the jobs aren't taken away, and the forest is still sustainable to us and to the animals that sustain us.
Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome to Your Forest. I'm Matthew Christoph. On this podcast, we talk about the environment and the science of sustainability. Today's episode is actually one that I've already released. It's a rerun of one that I recorded last year, actually, with Fabian Gray. It was a really, really awesome conversation that I had with him. If I did it again today, I would do it differently. I would have given him more time to talk. I would have let him tell his story rather than trying to push my own questions on him, because I think there was a lot more there that he could have told me, that he could have said. And so that might be something that I want to do in the future is get Fabian on again to talk, give more of his perspective, because I think he had a lot to offer that I maybe didn't allow to get there. So, but anyways, the reason I wanted to run this one by you guys again is because I think it's a conversation worth listening to, especially in this time in our society where we're having so much conversation and a lot of dispute over social injustice, social inequality. There's a lot of people up in arms about all kinds of things that are going on all over the world. And in Canada, I think one of the big social injustices that we have is Indigenous rights. And that plays into a big role into the forest management, because a lot of Indigenous people live within the forest and depend on the forest for their livelihood. So there's a direct connection there. And I wanted to run this one by you guys again, just to have you listen to it again, because even if you've listened to it already, it's a really interesting conversation. Fabian's perspective is so great. He really understands the Western perspective as well as his own Indigenous perspective, and he's trying to find a way forward, a path together towards a better future for everybody. And he really does see that. He sees that there is a way to do that. There's a lot of questions brought up in this podcast that I think I'm going to try and answer in future episodes here. I have a few people coming on that I think are really going to provide some interesting context. It's going to be really good. I don't want to tell you guys yet, but it'll be coming out in the next few episodes before the end of the year. And I just thought it was a good time for you guys to hear this one again, because like I said, even if you heard it before, it's such a good conversation. He's really telling his story, his perspective of what's going on with Indigenous people on the landscape, what's going on with forestry, and we try to figure out a way where we can combine those two things. And he really thinks it's possible. He thinks it's something we can do. So I implore you to really try to listen with an open heart to what Fabian has to say. And it was a great conversation. I loved it. I listen to it a couple times a year. Just like I've listened to it, I think 4 times already, just to try to re-engage my mind in the process of Indigenous culture, Indigenous rights, and how they've existed in Canada, especially when it comes to forest management. So, without any further messing around, I'll give you guys the sponsors and we'll get on our way. Sponsors for 2020, West Fraser is the #1 sponsor for 2020, and I could not do this without them. They've made it easy for me to bring people on, to have these great discussions, and to do it my way. So I really appreciate all their support, and I'm so thankful. Secondary sponsors, Green Lake Forestry. They've been with me since the beginning. Again, could not have done this without them. The room I got given to me from them is just, it couldn't be more perfect. So, and the last sponsor is Damage Timber. Damage Timber is a local company out of Edmonton, Alberta, and he sells all kinds of stuff. But the coolest thing he's selling, a staple product, is Damage Timber. He's selling charcuterie boards and butcher blocks and cutting boards and all kinds of stuff made from wildfire burnt wood. It is so cool. He custom makes them. Go to damagetimber.com, put in Your Forest 10 at checkout, and you can get 10% off. Check them out. They're awesome. And without any further messing around, let's dive right into this conversation that Fabian and I had over a year ago, 2019. Like I said, would have done it a little differently. Would have let him talk a little more. I would have interrupted a little less, and would have been a little bit different, I think. But it was still a good conversation, and I'm a close colleague with Fabian now. We work together a lot, and I've just grown to really, really respect his opinion and the way he approaches things. Yeah, let's do this. Here we go. Like, tell me your story. Tell me how you got into, having going to forestry school, and what got you into wanting to advocate for Indigenous communities in that context of forest management.
Well, I grew up in the bush, with going to the bush with many families, different families, and so I got a different perspective from looking at things from how things used to be back then isn't how things are right now, because they're way different as how we measure progress. It's not measured the way we measure it,
right?
Because even with the traditional use of plants, they're plentiful now. They're not that much, but as a management process, I think that's workable for some First Nations. Not all First Nations have access to certain types of plants, like the ones down south or up north.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
But I got into forest. I actually got into forestry. Oh, geez, I sound old. A while ago, and I laid out cut blocks. Okay. I've done timber cruising. I've done tree planting.
Oh, nice.
Regen surveys.
Yeah.
So, I worked in forestry in all different aspects.
So you got the operations and the silviculture. It's all, so it's great.
Yes, and
it's a well-rounded perspective to have. Yeah.
And along with that, I worked in the oil and gas field, and
right.
And their what do you call it? Their operations, how they work, what do they do, and if there's an oil spill or that, or something like that. But,
yeah.
So I pulled all these things together, educated myself, and I noticed there was a big gap between what we thought as a First Nation or as a cultural, traditional based nation between the Western science. There was a pretty big gap. We understood our ways. We didn't understand the Western science ways. And our ideas weren't incorporated, or they weren't recognized, shall we say?
Right. They're not the same values, so they're not meshing.
They're not the same values.
Yeah.
And we're out there from the beginning. Well, in the front lines per se, because we're out there every day. Every day we see the changes. We see where there's no water. We see where there's no plants going through. We see where there's no animals due to industry, oil and gas, forestry, cut blocks, and the effects of spraying, the effects of opening up new country for it. It all adds up. It all adds up. We see that every day. It's just that our perspective isn't, or our values aren't added into any long-term plans like the forest management plans of companies or the government's regional plans.
Yep.
So
yeah, no, that's for sure the tough part. And yeah, I definitely want to get into that kind of stuff for sure, because that's the type of stuff that's, I guess, how do we get two totally different cultures to see eye to eye and to see each other's side, so that we can move together as a single unit instead of being divided and having different objectives, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's well.
We can get into that later. For now, let's just stick to you.
Yeah.
So you were in oil and gas, you're in forestry, all that kind of stuff.
Oil and gas and forestry. Then moved up to did a little bit of construction work, but I came back home and I took a what was that course called? Environmental monitoring course from a place called Bear.
Okay.
That course was a Bear monitoring program. I think it was a 13-week program or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I got into that doing site assessments for our First Nation when it was mandated by provincial government that consultation needed to be done. So I came in at that time doing assessments.
Okay.
For about 3 or 4 years before.
When was that? What year was that, roughly?
5, 6.
Just for context for people listening.
2000. So this is 2012.
Oh, 2012.
Yeah, 2012, 2013.
Like 7 years ago.
Yeah, I started doing assessments.
Really?
On that.
That's when it became. I thought there was always mandatory consultation.
Well, consultation came in about 2001.
Oh, but was it mandatory?
Yeah. Or one of the court cases I forgot when it was, but it was mandated that they consult with First Nations anyway. I forgot what year it was.
Wow, that took a long time to figure out.
Yeah. Well, the policies keep changing. The consultation policy keeps changing.
Of course.
Some ideas there we don't like, but that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. You give a little, take a little. But then I got into, well, there was a need for a GIS thing. Mm-hmm. So one of my bosses, the one that I took over the job from, asked a person from Red Deer with GIS experience to come and teach us. Mm. So that got me, that lit a fire under me. So I looked for a college where GIS was given. Mm-hmm. It was in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. Okay. So I went over there for a year and trained for GIS, and then I came home. Then I took over the consultation office.
That's
since
perfect.
Then. It's been 5 years, and it's an advantage due to the fact that not very many First Nations have GIS people in their offices, coupled with the forestry and the oil and gas experience, and what to ask for, what questions do you ask? Because forestry companies or industry, oil and gas, their motto is if they don't ask questions, don't tell them nothing. Mm-hmm. So my job is to ask questions.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And when I started asking the questions, I started surprising them because of my experience in forestry, oil and gas, and especially with GIS, when I started asking for shape files, because there's all sorts of information in the shape file.
Of course, yeah.
And I started surprising those people. Mm-hmm. And then other First Nations started asking me questions. What do you ask? How do I ask? And what kind of information? So
yeah, for sure. It's
not only my nation that I help, it's the other nations that ask for my help.
That's awesome. No, you're definitely a unique individual in that sense, right? Like I don't know a lot of Indigenous people that have that, prescribe to the Western like education, Western, like, you know what I mean? It seems like a lot of them are reluctant to get into that system because they're not supported in that system, right? So it's difficult to get into. It's, you know what I mean? They're judged all the way through it because that's our society we live in, right? It's this weird thing, but yeah. It's like I think you have a lot of power there, and it's something that's needed for sure, right? Like that Indigenous perspective is an important one, but it's like it's also crucial just to our forest health, right? Because Indigenous people have been here since time immemorial, and the ecosystem health is conducive with Indigenous people, right? So it's interesting that it's taken us this long to realize that. Hey, maybe we should talk to the people who have been living here for thousands of years and understand the nuances and the little things, right? But it's good to see that someone like yourself is taking the initiative to get involved in that sense and making sure that these industries, the industry and companies know what's important to you and how we can start getting into it, right? Because
because when I used to go to the bush with my uncles, we used to just drink the water right out of the river. Yeah. But now you can't.
No,
it means the health. And you can tell the health of the forest isn't as healthy as it used to be. Mm-hmm. It's not as fruitful, and the medicines aren't as abundant. Mm-hmm. They're getting hard to find.
They are, eh? Okay.
Yeah, they are getting harder to find.
Yeah.
And part of the process that we watch out for, if a forestry company wants to cut down an area, we want to make sure there's ample enough medicines within that same area that they're cutting down or trampling over, just to leave some traditional plants and some habitat left behind.
So to make sure that in proximity to communities that need it, that if this one unit is taken and those plants are temporarily missing, that it's available elsewhere, so they're not left high and dry. I see. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
That's as with you could measure the health of the forest by the health of the people that live within that forest.
That was my next question, was just how, you know what I mean, that perspective of,
And we're not that healthy anymore.
Right.
we aren't. Diabetes is rampant, and that never used to be. Mm-hmm. But we're not as healthy as we used to be due to the forestry the forest conditions, the ecosites, everything around us. It's changed.
Well, colonialization definitely, you guys took a hit with that one, right? Changed everything. So that's all kinds of stuff there too to deal with. So yeah.
And some of the plants, medicines that we use that are gone are some of the plants and medicines that the animals eat, and we eat animals. So basically, when we shoot a moose, all the plants and things that he or she eats is practically medicine, and it's going into the meat.
Yeah.
So when we eat the meat, we're eating the meat and the medicines that's in them, and it changes it.
Yeah.
It keeps us healthier. So, sure. But some of those plants are dying off, and the moose aren't as healthy. And with the spraying of some cut blocks to allow for the spruce to grow, those plants aren't going to be available for 14 years for that area for some sprays.
So until they come back after the spray. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, that's an interesting one. That is, like, I had a guy on, a toxicologist, talking about spraying. I don't necessarily want to talk about spraying specifically right now, but like the question has come up a few times, like whether or not we need to be doing that, or if we should just let natural succession take its course. But the problem is, as a Western culture, we have these policies that mandate us to do certain things. It's a huge question that maybe that policy needs to change, right? For that kind of stuff. But anyways, I guess that's a whole nother, we could do another 4 hours on that. But, so before we get too deep into it, I want to try to, and you're doing a good job already explaining it, but, can you explain in more detail the importance of like forest health and how it's connected with, Indigenous people and community, and how, because like us as a Western culture, right? Like there's lots of people who consider themselves environmentalists, right? Consider themselves conservationists, or consider themselves like, oh, I'm an outdoorsman. I love the outdoors, right? I spend every second I can out there, right? But that I think it pales in comparison to Indigenous communities. I don't know this, but it just from talking with people, it seems like it's not even remotely the same, because you know what I mean? Like we go home and into the city or whatever. And whereas Indigenous culture, it seems like it's integrated into the forest health, like you were saying, but not just physical health, but spiritual health and that kind of stuff too. So I wonder, can you speak to that a little bit more and just kind of, because I think it's just important for people to recognize that the Indigenous perspective is vastly different from the Western perspective, right?
You see, how we look at things is that everything is connected to us, and even within the forest. Everything is connected, break down from the mosquitoes to the birds that eat the mosquitoes, and everything is connected in that way. It's one big picture. If you take one thing out, that's going to be incomplete and it's not going to function right. And that's how we see things. It's not healthy for the way the forest is right now. It's like we're out there every day. We see the changes that are coming, that are there, and we do voice our concern about it. But sometimes they fall on deaf ears, but we just track the changes. And if we know this area is not healthy, we'll leave it alone. We won't go hunting there, or we won't go pick anything there. Like if we know there's been an oil spill or some kind of activity over there, we'd leave that place alone. Okay. Let it regenerate to some point, being healthy.
Let it bounce back. Yeah.
Yeah. There's even the water table fluctuates. Some areas will be healthy and some areas won't be. So we track the changes like that.
Yeah.
Or even some of the trapline holders, they don't even trap anymore because there's hardly any fur-bearing animals out there.
Yeah.
And I think one trapline holder only got 2 furs here for 5 months worth.
Jesus.
About last year.
How are you supposed to live off that, right?
And that's due to the health of the forest. You could track what's in your trapline, what's around your community. You could track what changed, what has changed, what's not there, and what needs to be left alone, what needs to be worked on.
Yeah, that's a good point.
As spiritually we're connected to the land, we live there, and then, but like I said before, there's connections that how can I say this? There are connections that we acknowledge with the land and with each other that are real, that we try and live within the boundaries of that connection, not go off and do this and do that.
Right. You're trying to strike a balance with nature and live within that balance and be a part of the ecosystem as opposed to
being a problem.
Being a problem and taking yours and then getting out of there. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And and I think a lot of people, even a lot of researchers and non-Indigenous people would agree with you in saying that the forest health is probably not great, right? Because of all kinds of different things, right? From suppressing wildfire to the use of fossil fuels, contributing to climate change, contributing to all kinds of stuff to, more exploration, anthropogenic, whether it's roads or cut lines or cut blocks or whatever, right? It all has an impact, and it all seems to be heading towards the same direction, right? Like we need to, it seems to be so in that perspective, trying to figure out what that balance is to try and get us back to that balance, right? Trying to figure out how to word this properly. I guess for you guys, everything, does everything in nature have like a story and a use, or is it only certain types of things? Because it sounds like everything has its own history, its own story, its own part of the community, right? So, but I'm guessing there's probably certain plants that are like more important than others, or
everything has its place. every plant, every herb, every tree has medicines.
Mm-hmm.
There's only those certain special type of medicines that you find here and there every so often that are prized.
Mm.
Not every.
So there's rare ones that you want to find, but they're hard to find now.
They're harder to find now.
Okay.
Because they don't always grow in the same area.
Mm-hmm.
They don't always grow in the same year.
Right.
They'll be sporadic. It's those rare plants that are getting harder to find.
Okay.
And some of how we sometimes when there's industry coming in to replace, like what do you call that when the industry asks us when we go to do an assessment if there's anything else that I always make sure, like where the water's going, what the slope is, what plants are there plants, same kind of plants in that area,
right,
within that area, to make sure there's more, the plants that we use are there.
Right.
So I think First Nations should share more information with Western science so they'll have a better understanding of how we look at things, what we prize, what motivates us to protect these plants and why.
Yeah.
But most First Nations are hesitant to do that. But there has to come a time when we have to share and work, so we can share and work together to preserve what we have and to improve forest health and to improve the environment in some way.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. That's kind of where my assumption's been too, but I also understand that I also understand the reluctance to want to share that information, considering the history of, the rights being stepped on and that kind of stuff, right? So I wonder. I'm glad we got to this. I was hoping to get to this at the end, but we're getting it right at the beginning. So let's do this. So yeah, that sharing of Indigenous knowledge. How do you think we can start to convince communities to do some of that sharing, to start sharing that with, Western society, so that those values, like you said, can be protected and maintained and they can be known? Because right now I feel like a lot of the problem, there's a lot of people that in industry who want this kind of stuff to happen, right? They want sustainability forever for everything, right? But if we don't know what that means, it's hard to act on it, right? So how would you say we start to, obviously there's a lot of work to be done. Indigenous people will have to come to a consensus and figure out what they are willing to share and not to share, and that's their decision to make. But Western culture is also going to have to learn to be a lot better in a lot of different ways too, right? So but I feel like there's common ground to be had here, right? Like I feel like there can be respect and there can be cooperation if only all the information's on the table, right? How do we start to fix that kind of relationship? How do you build trust and that kind of stuff?
Well, how can you tell not nation to nation, but as a race, as a human race, that we're all in the same boat, whether climate change is here or not?
Yeah.
If we don't share the information to help improve or to help each other protect the environment, so our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren can have something.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're all in the same boat.
Totally.
And what knowledge we hold as First Nations ain't going to mean anything if there's no plants in there, because we're not working together to a common goal, which is having a good, healthy forest, sustainable forest. And I think it's high time that First Nations do wake up. Yeah, we need to work together, no matter what. And that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
That's why I've educated myself to try and understand more of the Western way of thinking and how I could bring my traditional raising of my traditional knowledge into one.
Try to integrate them, because I mean, one thing I brought up on a previous podcast was like Western culture is here and it's here to stay, right? But Indigenous culture has been struggling for a long time with community health and along with forest health, and everything is connected, like you said. And I feel like I feel like industry probably has more opportunity or more potential to try and reach out and build that trust, right? Because I could understand, of course, and the sharing needs to happen, but I could understand the reluctance from history and the past, right? So what do you think that industry can do to start to build that relationship, to bring, when I say industry, I mean individuals, right? Like obviously the person, the forester or the Indigenous consultation person or whatever, what can they do to start to build that trust and build that relationship so that those Indigenous values can be accounted for and become a serious part of the plan, where like they might actually go, hey, no, we're not going to cut that block or any of these cut blocks because we recognize the importance of this to the Indigenous community nearby, right? So what can industry do to make those changes happen? Because I think there's more, and this is my perspective, not being on the front lines the way you are, right? Like obviously you're seeing this every day. I'm coming at it from a totally outside perspective. I feel like there's a lot of people that want to do this, want to be engaged in it. But I mean, like as a white dude, like what the hell am I going to take? You know what I mean? Like I don't know any of it, and I'm not. And so like, how do we? Yeah, what can industry do to help move this along, right? To give like Indigenous communities a voice.
I think it's through better consultation and pre-consultation before their projects, and address their concerns and implement their concerns into the plan. Right. And that'll make them feel a part of the process, and that'll help things along. That'll build trust. If 2 or 3 ideas of a community are implemented into, let's say, a forestry FMA in one area, to leave a certain area alone for protection, then they'd be more willing to work with other industry in that perspective.
So we're not seeing that change. Like the consultation might be happening, but you're not seeing as much change as you would like to see in promotion of those values.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If our values were implemented into any forest management plan or industry plan, then I think that's where you'd start to earn the trust of First Nations and their values.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. It's just crazy to me that it's taken, like, it wasn't until 2013 that this was, or even 2003 or whatever it was, 2001 when you said we started doing consultation, right? It blows my mind that it took that long. But no, I think that totally makes sense. Because like saying consultation, right? Like I think consultation is something that's mandatory now and needs to be done. But how do we make sure that, and I don't even know if this is happening or not. This is just me, speculating. How do we ensure that consultation? Because like, what is the definition of consultation, right? Can they say, "Oh, we put a flyer in the paper and let them know," and does that count, or does it have to be like, "Hey, we sent a representative to a council meeting or whatever, and we discussed it with the leaders of the community, and we've gone through a whole like." Is it that in depth, or is it like so? Obviously, that's what needs to happen, right? The actual face-to-face conversations and going out into the bush and seeing it together and showing and learning, right? Like I think that's what needs to happen, because I think sitting in an office talking about this stuff is difficult to contextualize for a lot of people, especially non-Indigenous people with outside perspective, right? Whereas if you took them into the bush and you go, "See this? Like we need this. This is important for X, Y, and Z, and all you need to do is this, and we can protect this resource," right? I don't even know where I'm going. I'm just rambling right now.
Yeah, they do notify us, and like I said before, they'll just send you a plan and that's it, through a PDF file, and that's it.
So that's the requirement.
That's a consultation with a consultation officer or coordinator, manager. And the kicker is I ask for shape files and other information. That's where I always get my information from.
Well, that's important to know, because then you know exactly where these plans are taking place, instead of it being explained in words.
Yeah, because Alberta Heritage and other government agencies don't have the information that we have.
Right.
We have GPS our old homesteads, our old cabins, our cabins right now, or our grave sites. Mm-hmm. Or spiritual sites. We have them in our mapping system. The government doesn't have that information. So they have to, they notify us, and that's where we if it's too close to a grave site, then we tell them, we ask them, no, this is a grave site. This is where we'll take you to it. We'll GPS it. Mm-hmm. You work around it, or you don't work around it at all. But some of the information is registered with Alberta Heritage, mm-hmm. and they're required to consult with us with their plans.
Oh, okay.
So that's
so
how
what's
that
the hesitancy
works.
to? I'm not saying that you should be sharing all that with the government, but when it's time to, obviously the sharing happens, right? What's the hesitancy to just give the Alberta government the like the full file? Like, here, this is all of our grave sites, all of our spiritual sites, all our prayer trees, is there some worry in the, and I'm coming from a place where I don't know the perspective. So is there some concern that might be held against you guys somehow, or is it, or just kind of just worry because of history of everything else?
Both, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, to be held against, and to deem it don't have to protect it, and if it's you have all the information that you don't need to consult with us.
I see. That's a good point.
They'll sidestep our nation.
That's a super good point.
Because they have the information.
Because we got it all, so we don't need to talk to them. Then we did the consultation. Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about that. Yeah. That's smart. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But we do share some of the, like I shared all my grave sites.
Okay.
So they're registered.
Right.
Because because there's different levels of consultation. With 3D seismic work, they don't have to consult because it's low impact. But this past winter, they came to work in our area within 3 grave sites. So they had to notify us. Mm-hmm. So I had to go check them out. We've been 100 meters off or 150 meters around that graveyard. So they don't go into that site.
Okay.
So that's why they had to notify us, because I registered my grave sites with Alberta Heritage. Because that's one of the mechanisms they have, government or industry has, when they send their plans into the government. Okay, you notify this because there's a grave site here.
So it comes down to trust again, right?
Yeah.
Like, ultimately, it would be great if everybody had the information and we could make sure that everybody's trusted. Then that would be the best for everyone, because they'll consult you when the consultation needs to be happening, but also withholding that out of fear from, like you said, right, up until the last 20 years, there hasn't been consultation. So yeah, that's a hard one to crack. What's the right thing to do there, right? So I guess it comes down to building that communication and trust again, right?
Yeah, I think more sites can be protected if the information was shared. Mm-hmm. Like if in particular your graves, mm-hmm. if they were saved with Alberta Heritage. Mm-hmm. But that's my thought. That's some First Nations rather not.
I'm sure there's a million perspectives on it. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. We're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
We all use the forest, healthy or unhealthy. Mm-hmm. We all feel the effects of global warming. Like, even the fires are getting worse, and where's the water going? And
longer droughts, longer fire seasons.
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff. Yeah.
I think it's about time that we try and work together in that sense.
Both sides
because like I said, we're all in the same boat.
I totally agree. Both sides got to stop beating around the bush, and we need to just do something about this, right? But both sides have to cooperate. I guess it's the hard part. That's tough.
And the concept of, putting value on everything else, I think I don't know if it has to change. We value the land. Western way of thinking values what's on the land.
That's a good way to put it. That's I like that. Yeah.
So we have to find a happy medium, where the jobs aren't taken away, and the forest is still sustainable to us and to the animals that sustain us. So,
no, that's a good point for sure. Yeah, no, I think we need to find an equilibrium, right? Like I think, and I've said this a few times on different episodes and stuff like that, but people like to think of themselves as separate from nature somehow, as somehow superior or better. We're able to manipulate it, therefore we're a greater being or some kind of crazy bullshit. But I mean, it's not true. Like we are from the basic. If you go all the way back to like astrophysicists, right? Like we are made up literally of star stuff. You know what I mean? Like everything in the universe started, you know what I mean? As the three main particles that started at the beginning of the universe, and we're all made up of the same stuff. So to pretend that we as humans are somehow different than nature, other than, it's ridiculous, right? We are part of it, and we are part of that balance as well. But because of opposable thumbs and big brains, we've figured out that we might be, maybe we can exploit it a little more. But yeah, I think even Western culture, maybe not as a whole, but like individuals, people, right, have started to realize that might be true. And maybe there is a more holistic way to go about getting the resources we require and finding a balance amongst all things, right? I think part of the Western culture's problem is that we have our perspective is very narrow as it comes to nature relative to, First Nations perspective. And I think it's important that more people get that perspective. And I personally don't have that perspective. I'm trying to acquire it a little bit, piece by piece, talking to guys like you, but it's try and get some understanding of it, right? Appreciation for. Yeah, it's an impossible question, right? Like how, so obviously we need to get, so industry and managers need to get out there and talk face to face with communities and start building a relationship to try and build that trust and sense of community, right? And togetherness, right? Because if we work against each other, we're both going to lose what we need.
Yeah, I'll say a little story.
Yeah.
There was a woman here about 3 or 4 years ago that got lost in a bush.
Okay.
And they presumed her to have died.
Mm-hmm.
And she come walking out of the bush about 2.5 weeks later.
Right.
And she survived within the forest. The forest sustained her with her berries and whatever she could get. And she didn't have anything. She didn't even have shoes on.
Right.
Okay, you take one of your high-ranking officials, government people, go throw them in a bush. How long could they survive?
Yeah.
Okay, our sustainability is in the forest. Western sustainability is in Safeway or Walmart or wherever they shop. But
yeah,
that's two totally different perspectives.
Totally. No, I agree. Yeah, there's been a disconnect for most of society, Western society, right, from that perspective. And yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. But we need to get back to that. Definitely, I think we both agree that that's super important to get back to those kind of uses and that kind of stuff, because once it's gone, right? Like,
and this woman didn't have a knife, a gun, or anything.
Really?
2.5 weeks, she survived in the bush. She come walking out of Oilfield Road.
I'm hoping this must have been summer. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So at least it wasn't -30 or something. But yeah.
So, but if a woman out there could survive and be sustained by the forest, then the forest is still healthy.
Mm-hmm.
If the forest can't sustain us, then it's not healthy. Then we're not healthy.
And at this point, you think it's not. It's starting to. You said the forest health, from your perspective, is down, and it's becoming difficult to find certain plants. And so, what other indicators? Like I'm assuming, like up north, northern Alberta, a lot of communities depend pretty highly on large mammals like moose, right? Pretty specifically with moose. And I think, even if I look at my hunting draws, my regulations on my hunting draws, I see that it's getting where I used to be able to go and get just buy a general moose tag every year. Now I have to apply for a draw, and it's once every 10 years or something, right? So I think even we recognize that moose population numbers are down and that kind of stuff. So I'm guessing that's probably another indicator for.
Yeah, most hunters and trapline holders that I know say that the moose have declined in their areas.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is going to be the second. I started a wildlife monitoring program with Inotech Alberta here. There's a company in South Side. We're setting up 100 cameras for wildlife monitoring from ungulates to wolves to anything that'll come across the cameras.
Right. That's awesome.
And so far, the first 5 months, there is moose out there.
Right.
They're not all on the road.
No, of course. Yeah. No, of course. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. For those road hunters out there, they're not all on the road.
I'm okay with the moose not being on the road, because those road hunters don't get to get their meat, which I'm okay with, because that's not hunting. That's just shooting.
Yeah. It's a 3-year project. So we'll be changing out the SD cards and batteries every 6 months. And we're geotagging the pictures and the animals, the species. And the data is crunched by ABMI and Inotech, and they'll have it all on density and populations and all that. And at the end of the 3rd year.
Oh, nice. So it just starts 2.5 years from now then.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's awesome. So 100 cameras. So where are these cameras situated?
They're all over in our traditional land use area, which is 8,600 square kilometers.
Okay.
In the random selected points.
Yeah.
But
you didn't set them up on like game trails and stuff, or just like how did you select the points? Like, where to put the
they were computer generated.
Oh, really?
And there's some that we couldn't get into, so we improvised.
Okay.
We did put some on moose corridors and where I know there's moose.
Yeah.
Moose corridors. Mineral licks.
Yep.
We'll be doing that here in a week or so, putting out the rest of the 25 cameras. But the data we got is interesting so far. Interesting.
What does it tell you?
There's probably, out of, let's say 75 cameras, I'll say there's maybe half with moose in it.
Okay.
Or some sort of animal.
Okay.
We've only had like 2 cameras with nothing in it, 2 or 3 cameras with nothing in it.
That's pretty interesting, because if you're not putting them on corridors, like you're not putting them on specifically on game trails and that kind of stuff, the fact that you're getting moose on just like randomly selected sites in the middle of moose country, right? Because I mean, they generally, unless they're pressured, they tend to follow the easiest path, same as us, right? Yeah. So it's interesting that you're getting them even then. So like I would agree. Like I see lots of moose out there. Once you get, away from civilization, you get into the bush, you start finding moose, right? But it's interesting. That's cool. That's a cool project.
Yeah, the data is going to be good, and we're probably going to share it with Inotech and ABMI, and so
yeah. So what's the hope? What was the hope in doing that research?
I had to, say appease the First Nation that there is moose out there. Like
Oh, I see.
Not everything is dead.
Oh, okay. So we haven't lost all hope yet. We're still at hope. It just,
Yeah, and also to make sure, well, there is to appease them that there is moose out there and the population isn't actually dwindling, but
okay.
And hopefully we could limit the amount of people hunting in the area.
Oh yeah.
Let the population come up.
So it is down, but you're saying it's not like dwindling to nothing. It's okay.
No,
I totally agree. I've been saying for a while that even in Western culture, like for like hunters like myself, right? I was like, if they need to give an area like a 2, 3, 5 year break, saying, hey, no moose hunting in this WMU, right? I think that we should do that because it's for the overall benefit of sustainability, period. It's like, okay, so what? Now you have to find a new unit to hunt in. That's part of what's fun about hunting is getting out there and seeing nature, exploring new territory, learning about the land. And like these guys that just hunt the same spot year after year for their entire life, it's like you're not really learning a whole lot, right? You already know. It's like it's good. Not that it's not bad to like if you know it's a honey hole, right? Then you know you can go there. But I think you're right. Like I totally agree that to reduce the number of animals taken temporarily might be a totally good call, right?
That's how the trapline holders and how the elders pick their medicines. They rotate. They'll go 1 or 2 year in one area, and then move on to another area, so that area will regenerate. And they keep moving on,
right?
So they won't overuse an area.
Right.
So
make sure it's sustainable. It's always there.
Yeah.
Just kind of,
Yeah.
Cool.
So I don't know if Alberta Environment and Forestry would like that idea, but that is a very good idea where one area is left alone to be allowed to regenerate. So even as with the forest fires getting more intense and bigger, they're going to need more forests to be made available to the animals.
What do you think about, and I don't know the answer to this, what do you think about the concept that like we're replacing the lack of wildfire or in the you know what I mean? From suppressing wildfire, we like to say that, cut blocks are imitating that wildfire and trying to create that biodiversity that has been lost through the lack of burns, right? Do you prescribe to that idea? Does that make sense to you in some ways and not? I mean, I understand they're not the same thing. They're not the same disturbance, obviously, right? Like they do very different things. A wildfire is going to burn all the small stuff, leave the big stuff. A cut block's going to do the opposite. It's going to take the big stuff, leave the small stuff. So you're having a different impact there. But the idea of creating that diversity of age range of forest, I guess, right, is the intention of forest management, right? Do you think that makes sense, or do you think there needs to be? I mean, I know Indigenous people used to do a lot of burning, right, and some maintaining of that process as well. So I wonder where the balance is in that, right? Because we're at a place now where I think we have more, like you said, more unhealthy forests for a lot of different reasons, right? And we need to try to find that balance again. So,
yeah, because that's tricky, because if a fire comes rolling along, then the forestry plan has to be changed from the forestry company.
Right.
They have to
salvage logs.
Salvage the logs, and then their 5-year plan is out the window.
Right.
Okay, but
just for people, sorry, just to cut in, because people might not understand that. So basically, if a fire comes through and burns a big giant area, forest companies have to go in and they have to cut those burnt logs before they cut anything else, because that is now, it's part of the plan. They want to make sure that, wood that's standing and is taken first, right? That's been burnt, because it's hard to explain, but sorry, go ahead.
I think it's difficult if you identify the old growth or where fire potential is going to be, because there's models that you could use where the fire, like in in any mapping system where how the fire would behave.
Yeah.
And compare that to that with the age of the forest, and I think that would be a better way of identifying and copying the effects of a fire, like a true fire, instead of what we think what cut block would look like if it went through a fire and all that.
Yeah.
So,
it's a tough one because I think that's happening. Like I think there's a lot of research being done to try and support, having wood products, and then also having, just emulating the land, and like that's the ultimate goal, right? I mean, that's at least in my optimistic, euphoric head. I think like that's what we want to do, right? Is we want to have these wood resources as well as clean water and good biodiversity and good habitat and indigenous values and all these things, right? That's the dream. And I feel like it's possible. I feel like we can do this if we work together, like you said, right? I don't know, but I like to sure think that, right? So it's
one of the biggest things that First Nations are adamant about is the spraying part.
Okay.
There is no biodiversity there if you're spraying to let the spruce come up, because of your AAC might go down in the future if those don't come up. I think if you're going to let the natural succession of the forest go, is plant them, just let them be.
Right.
What is will be.
Yeah.
If a conifer cut block turns into a deciduous cut block, then so be it. So
that's a huge conversation that I want to try to get somebody on to talk about that, because that's a conversation that I think a lot of people are trying to have, right? Like what is because right now our laws say that if you cut down a conifer forest, you have to have a conifer forest back. And that's an attempt to try to have that biodiversity over time. But like, I know you know this, I'm explaining this to other people, but now, like you're saying, right, the natural succession of the forest a lot of times is if you cut an aspen block, a lot of times you're going to get a conifer block coming back up, because generally spruce is growing under aspen, right? And then vice versa. When a spruce plantation has fallen apart, a lot of times you end up getting aspen coming back. So that argument is a huge one that I think we're trying to have in the scientific community and try to figure out what is right. And I think there's a lot of people for and against for a lot of different economic reasons. I think that's part of the problem, right? There's a lot of tenure, like forest tenure pressure there. But I think scientifically, I don't know the answer, but it seems logical to me, right? It makes sense to me that you would want, but if we did that, if we started to allow natural forest succession to happen, so you cut a conifer block and you have aspen coming up, or a mixed wood, we'll say you have aspen with conifer coming up, which is probably what would happen. Should there be emphasis on when you cut an aspen block, making that a conifer block, right? To try and make sure that balance happens. But that's, how do you balance nature, right? Like it's such there's a million different inputs that need to happen. So, but I definitely think you're right though. Like there's questions there that we haven't found the answer to yet quite, right? Is it necessary to spray? And like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, to look at it in a money perspective. Yeah, it's all about the money. The less you spend and the more you make. So
yeah,
and plus it's economics. If you lower the AAC, then you're gonna put people out of work.
But it comes down to like a policy thing almost, right? Because even like what you said, like the less you spend, the more money you make, but spraying costs money, right? Whereas it would be, but the problem, like you said, if they don't spray, then they didn't meet their regeneration requirements for that cut block. So now they lose annual allowable cut future years. So it costs them money. So I just had to explain that so people understand. But if we can change the policy to allow for that, a different regeneration standards, because we only just came up with the regeneration standards in like 98 or something, we finalized them, right? So it's only been 21 years. So now maybe we need to relook at it and go, that was a good first attempt. Let's try again. Maybe. I don't know, right? And the regeneration standards were a huge success for a lot of, we all, we're happy. We're like, hey, we have a regeneration standard. We never had this before. But now, yeah, maybe it's time to reevaluate, take another look, and make sure that we're doing what's right for, maybe we were a little bit simplified in our thinking before. And Western science is only just catching up. So
even with the regional forest plans that they're coming up with, they're coming up with, where they're using the whole region for their data collection to justify one area being logged out. Well, this area is healthy, and so all those numbers are crunched together anyway. But I think that needs to be looked over. Mm-hmm. Well, what's our values? Mm-hmm. What's our objectives?
Yeah,
and what are our targets? Our values are the forest, our medicines, and the animals that sustain us, and our objective is to keep those things around.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we got to start meeting.
Got to start communicating. I like that. No, I like that a lot. And I think a lot of people would be in agreement with you, right? That how can we work towards this common goal without having a conversation, right? So it's got to start, I think, both sides have to start putting a little more effort into it, right?
Yeah, I think the old school way of thinking is old school. It's not working. It hasn't, and it's not working.
Yeah.
If I were to withhold any information that might be vital to a forestry plan or to oil and gas field plan, that why wouldn't I share it? So they leave that alone.
Yeah.
It's like I said this winter, they had to consult with us because of the graves. Mm-hmm. Because I shared my information with Alberta Heritage. Mm-hmm. And if I continue to find my graves, I will continue to share them. Mm-hmm. That's my way of thinking. Totally. I think, what do you call that? Reconciliation?
Oh, reconciliation, yes.
Yeah. I think that's an overused word. I think just use common sense.
Right.
Yeah. Common sense help. If you share your information, you both of you share your information together, you guys are going to get a better result.
I totally agree. If we can all trust one another, then we're going to work towards a similar goal, right? Like why? Of course. And like I'm like I said, I'm a GIS guy myself a little bit, and I would love to see a place like now when we're doing inventories, right? We're throwing in ecosite, we throw in like as much stuff as we can to try and represent that piece of land, right? So we represent where the water table is and what the nutrients are and how wet it is and how tall they are, how old, how long they grow, or whatever, right? All kinds of different stuff. And is there, do you think it's possible to start to use like inventory information, forest inventory information, to start to suss out where certain ecosites, where we might find, where Indigenous communities might find these rare plants that they need? Like, is there enough data? I mean, obviously in the Indigenous community there would be.
Yeah, there is. You could do that. Yeah.
You could do that.
Yeah, that's why I could probably get a notification for a site, see it, go through my map, my air photos, and my AVI, and all my information with all my LiDAR information, see how wet it is, and all. Before I even go.
Yeah, right.
I know what I'm going to find there.
Exactly. Because you understand it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what I do too.
Yeah.
My perspective is different, right? But yeah, like I can imagine what that's going to look like on the ground and what you're going to find for understory growth and what kind of shrubs and whatever, right? So
what medicines they are in there.
Yeah.
Because I have like 2 or 3 pages of I take with me when I check off with medicines.
Ah, nice. So what?
I don't even have to take that with me because I know what's going to go.
So have you been correct? Like when you look on the imagery and LiDAR and that, and you assume you're like, hey, there might be something here. And how correct have you been in your assumptions?
I'd say about 70-80%.
That's pretty good.
Most of the plants I identified being before going out there.
Yeah,
are there.
I believe it. And that other percent might have to do with something you can't see, like parent material in the soil or whatever, right? Acidity or
the change from like muskeg to hard ground. That
right.
change or somewhere.
Some transition stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I thought. That was my assumption that from an eco site we could determine what plants are there, and Indigenous communities could take that and be like, hey, this is places where we can look for these rare plants that you want to find, right? Have you ever been able to find some of those rare?
No, not through that.
That's tougher. That's a little bit more.
That's a little bit tougher, but
okay.
That if we shared some of our medicines with Western, let's say we shared it with you, and you could plot out where these medicines are, and then you plot out your cut blocks, and then you take that to a committee. Okay, this is a cut block. These are all the medicines in there. Everything is in there, but there's more just to the south of it or to the north of that cut block.
Yeah.
See,
I would love to see that.
Most people are visual, so you have to actually show it, not explain it.
Are you working towards something like that? Because you'd be the guy, right? You'd be the guy to work with people to get to that. And like, I would love to be a part of that. That just sounds like a really cool thing, right? But
yeah. Hopefully that's something to work on. Actually,
is anybody doing that?
No, I don't
Not
think
yet.
so.
Okay.
Because from what I know, most elders or First Nations won't share information about their medicinal plants.
I get it. I get it, man. Like our ancestors' track record isn't great with treating Indigenous people with respect, right? So I get the hesitancy, especially with elders who probably remember, right, certain injustices and stuff. So
but it's come to the point where you have to.
Sometimes you just have to start trusting again. Yeah. That's hard. That's impossible. I don't even know how to begin to do that, right? Like this is you and I talking, right? And but for some people might not share the same perspective, right? And so it's.
Oh no, I'll probably be chastised after if somebody hears about it, but.
I will be too.
Yeah. it's high time where, things put aside. Mm-hmm. Like what you were just saying here, mapping out where these things are, the potential. High potential, low potential. Mm-hmm. So they see those plants are still out there.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah. They're not really being destroyed by forestry or oil and gas. They're still out there.
Mm-hmm. And if they are being, negatively affected by forestry, oil and gas or whatever, then we can take action to stop that or prevent it. Right?
Yeah. And what's causing it? Maybe it's something else down the line.
Yeah. Maybe it's a correlation, not a causation, right? Like maybe it's one of those things that just like, it looks like it makes sense, but it doesn't. Yeah. And without knowing it, we can't possibly prevent that. Right. So I agree, but my perspective is pretty biased towards Western culture, but I would love to see that. That would be awesome to have that knowledge shared. I understand not wanting to be available for everybody. Cause I mean, I'm sure you might get some,
No, I'd like to do that for my own traditional territory.
Yeah.
Other First Nations don't have to agree with it. Cause it's like, it's what they think.
Well, you can be the case study for it, right?
Yeah. It's not, if
you can make this work, then I think you could change a lot of thinking in the forest industry and management and government, right? And in realizing that, hey, we can do this together. This doesn't have to be a bullfight, right? Like we can do this.
Yeah.
I think that's important to do for sure.
Yeah.
So and this is more specific about like individual plants and stuff like that, because I think some people might think of traditional use plants as like primitive or as like, you know what I mean? Like having so just as an example, so just to so people understand what we're talking about here and talks to like medicinal plants, like we're talking real medicines that have real effects. This isn't some, hippie bullshit, because lots of people have that perspective that this is just like, you know what I mean? It's the hippie, not real, holistic thing. But it's like, no, this is stuff that we've proven through science. I mean, for Christ's sake, we know that aspen and willow has acetylsalic acid, which is literally aspirin in it, right? So we know that's for headaches and stuff. So what other kind of things can you tell me that just to kind of prove to people that these things are important, and like especially for cultural purposes, right?
Well, there's this one plant that's can make a tea, chaga, I think it's called.
Okay,
and that it's it prevents cancer.
Juniper, Chuga. The genus name is TJUGA. That one? No. Okay.
It's from my what's that tree called now? Birch.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The real old birch. It's got some properties in there when you make the tea that it's got
antioxidants or whatever.
Antioxidants, yeah.
Okay.
It's That's stuff awesome. Like that. And rat root's got a lot of medicinal purposes. You don't really mix. Sometimes you mix one or two plants together to get the actual medicine you want.
It's just like a pharmacy almost, right? Like you take two different compounds, push them together, and you get a certain reaction, right?
Yeah. Even the certain types of leaves have that ointment.
Oh, like aloe vera type stuff, like for sunburns or
or
eczema.
Eczema.
Oh, okay.
Eczema and cuts, burns.
Oh, antibiotic.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, like polysporin type stuff. Yeah. What would you use for that? I've never heard that one. The polysporin type stuff, would like sap or something, or
just when the black spruce, the BAM, the black aspen.
Oh, okay, balsam poplar. Yeah.
When the leaves are coming out by the river.
Oh,
they come out like
when they're coming out of the buds, like just busting out of the buds a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay,
take those and put them away, and that's your.
That's cool. It's amazing. Well, and again, it's like people go to the pharmacy all the time, right? And they go and get their pills, right? And people tend to forget that all that stuff at some point came from nature, right? It's all plant compounds that have at some point or another, right? So I think people tend to forget that, again, getting back to that connection, kind of full circle, right? Like that full connectivity to humans, to nature, to especially indigenous culture, right? And spirituality to nature and the health of the community.
And there's certain ways you approach certain medicines. Either you approach them from the south and then pick them, or approach them from the east and then pick them. There's a certain way you approach what you're going to go pick.
Okay.
It's in spiritual sense.
Right.
Okay, when you're using that traditional medicine, it's not only the healing properties, the physical properties of it.
Yeah.
Your spirituality is adding into it. It's like giving it I'll call it, what do you call it? It's like giving it a boost. It's like a Red Bull.
Yeah, it's giving you wings.
Yeah. The spiritual aspect is also introduced into it. So
for sure,
you have faith in that medicine,
and
you have faith in yourself to make that medicine.
Yeah.
That's part of the spirituality sense. Like you go to a doctor, he gives you an aspirin for a headache. Take 2, call me in the morning, how should you feel? You take them, you feel good. Okay, that doctor you gave that doctor that faith to heal you.
Right.
By giving you the pills physically.
Mm-hmm.
And then here it's going to take you. He's saying that this is going to heal you.
He's going to fix it. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
meanwhile, it's a placebo or something.
Yeah. In native spirituality, or in any spirituality, you have that power within you to heal yourself, but with the help of these herbs.
I could totally see that. Like it's to deny the fact that there's a spirituality and a emotion to when it comes to nature. I mean, everybody, like I'm not a religious person in the traditional sense. And traditional, I mean, like, Western religion, right? But for me, the forest is my religion, right? Like it is this thing that when I'm doubting myself and I'm having a hard time, I go and I sit quietly and I take in the things around me and I enjoy it, and it brings you calm and it brings you a sense of spiritual, just kind of relief, right? So I think even for people that are not Indigenous, they could understand and they could sympathize and empathize with that viewpoint of totally denying the power of the human mind and factors unknown, right? Like magic is just science we don't understand yet, right? So it's to deny that would be foolish. So I like to remain open-minded, right? But it's very, very cool stuff. And I hope that we can start to work, like you were saying, work together, as human beings towards this common goal. But I think, like for my part, I mean, like industry and that kind of stuff has to take that first step in showing. You know what I mean? We want to communicate. We want to do the right thing. We want to make sure that our values are aligned, right? And that, because I think it can be done, but it needs to be done, right? Like someone needs to take the first step and it needs to be done. It's going to be different than the past, but we can't keep doing shit the way we used to do it because it doesn't work, right? It's funny how humans, no matter how far we advance ourselves as humanity, we always realize that the way we used to do things was stupid and we need to change. But we think that now we've got it figured out, right? Now we've got it. We know what it is now, until all of a sudden, it's not. We need to change again, right? We're always adapting. It's never the end point, right? So, yeah, I hope we can start to see that kind of stuff. So if you had one kind of like just last thing to wrap this all up, if you had a magic wand, you're the king of the world. You got the magic wand. You can just flick it. You can do whatever you want. What changes would you want to see to help this along? Like what would you do if you had full control? You're deciding how forest management's being done. We know we still need, you know what I mean? We need more representation of Indigenous perspective, right? Indigenous values. We need clean water. We need biodiversity. We need lumber. We need, resources to heat our home, all this stuff. How would you balance this better?
Less politicians.
I think a lot of people.
The more politicians you have, the less common sense there is in policy.
yeah, for sure. I think that's inevitable. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I think,
there's a commonality right there, right? Nobody trusts politicians, right?
I think it's letting the past go. Like you said, things aren't working. And who said it? Is it Einstein? If you keep on doing something.
What
does that sound?
Oh, like? Yeah. It was Einstein. It's about foolishness. Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Like it's,
and you keep doing it over, and even though it's the same result, you keep doing it over and over again.
Yeah.
Okay, you put common sense into there. Mm-hmm. You're going to do it right. Mm-hmm. I think, on a First Nations perspective, I think we have to get over ourselves, man. Mm-hmm. Please. We can't move ahead without letting go.
Good point.
Of the past.
You're right. You can't.
Nobody can. Mm-hmm. No First Nation or any nation at all can move ahead without letting go of the past and learning how to trust again and because it's going to benefit everybody. If we share and you share, then we could look into how we could work together in any perspective, forestry perspective or climate change even. How because we're out there seeing these changes come before you even see it. So I think the communication part is vital in that.
So what can, and we kind of answered this already, but what can the Western culture do to encourage and support and help Indigenous communities feel represented and feel like they can trust and feel, you know what I mean? Feel safe to share and not be taken advantage of, right?
Help them feel like, well, get them a part of the process, the planning process. And if they have any suggestions in your plans, then implement those suggestions or into your plans. So make them feel a part of their process, that they are a part of it. So
constant innovation is needed, and we need to constantly innovate forest management, because sustainable forest management is always, our understanding of it is always changing. Yeah. So taking it seriously, actually getting into the communities, talking with them, taking the first step to make them feel respected and like their values are, you know, valued, are taken seriously. So no, that makes sense to me.
Yeah,
totally. I agree. Okay. Anything you want to, any final words of wisdom you want to drop on us?
Good.
Any stories or anything like that? Any anecdotes? No, we're good.
Yeah, we're good.
Awesome, man. Well, This is an incredible conversation. I think we covered a lot of ground. So this is perfect. I appreciate you coming on, man. This is awesome. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. That was a wicked episode, I think. I mean, Fabian, he tells it like he sees it, right? And I really appreciated his perspective and, you know, the vulnerability on his part to come on and have this conversation, where I think it's really difficult. There's a lot of tension. A lot of people don't want to have this conversation. So I really appreciate him coming on. This is great. Thanks so much, Fabian. You're the best. I hope you keep doing the good work that you've been doing. And if anyone out there listening, please remember to review, you know, rate and subscribe, all that kind of stuff. It really helps me out a lot. Lets me know what's going on. And if anyone has, you know, questions and that kind of stuff, I haven't said this in a while, you can contact me at yourforestpodcast@gmail.com and I'll try to get back to you. So I appreciate you guys checking this thing out, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.